What is up, everybody? I am your host, Brody Frye, and I am so excited to start this journey with you. I feel like everybody nowadays has a podcast. It's 2023, and really, why would I start a podcast now? Crazy, right? Well, today we're going to discuss some of the reasons why I am now and some of the reasons why it took me so long. Specifically, I'd like to discuss the topic of judgment. That's definitely one of the bigger reasons that took me so long. But here we go. Let me know what you guys think of this intro, and let's rock and roll it. Hey everyone, it's Brody Frye, and here we dive deep into difficult questions. We'll map out thoughts, theories, and crazy ideas for the love of knowledge and growth. So, how do we answer some of the mind's toughest questions? This is the Mind Hiking Podcast. All right, judgment. This is a big topic. We could really go anywhere with this. Lots of tangents, lots of stories, lots of things to discuss here. What I want to talk about specifically, where to start? I guess we'll start towards the beginning, back in the primal ages, right? We were tribe animals. We were pack animals. Like, we survived through a team. We needed to stick together, and judgment comes from that need to survive. We work better as a team, as a pack, and the ones that were outcasted usually didn't make it. So that's kind of where that, like, the fundamental fear of judgment stems from. We need to survive. We need to fit in. So a lot of this has to do with the need to fit in. So it really is at our core a fear. And this is something every person battles every day. You know, you get those people that say, oh, that's not me. I don't care what people think of me. Well, that's not true. You do care what people think of you. And really, that's kind of more of an ego topic. But to sum that up, that is the same thing, fear of judgment, where you're putting up this image, this front that you don't care. You want people to think that you don't care what people think of them. And that just loops right back into the whole topic, fear of judgment. And if you still believe that you don't care what people think of you, you probably lie to yourself about other things too. So, one thing that I do want to point out on this point is there is something to be said about the specific person too. You know, if you are walking down the street and you see a homeless person and they call you a name, or they judge you in some way like that, like they don't like your shoes or whatever, they say whatever comment they say, there's something to be said about that over somebody that you respect. Like, if you think about somebody that you really respect or you look up to or whatever, whether you've met them or not. But imagine somebody that you look up to saying something like that to you. Like, side by side, same comment coming from a homeless guy on the street versus somebody that you really look up to. You know, it's an interesting kind of matrix there where, again, the value that you're putting into those words, it's funny how that also fluctuates. The value changes coming from different individuals as well. And that might be a status thing, and there you go, we're right back into the judgment where now it's coming from you, where you're judging a specific person and valuing their words accordingly in your own kind of charts. So just an interesting side note on that. One thing that I like to think about too when I'm thinking about judgment or something that can kind of like really put you in check, I guess, or really feel how you feel specifically about the topic is think about, you're out to dinner or something, or in some sort of a public setting, some public environment. Imagine climbing up onto a table and singing. Now, for many people, that might immediately put a pit in your stomach, having that much attention on you. For a lot of people, like back in high school, giving speeches or presentations at work, that puts pits in people's stomach. It makes you uncomfortable because you're put on the spot. And when you're put on the spot, you're putting yourself in a situation to be judged. And that's like a root fear that people have, because you're putting yourself in a spot where you're vulnerable to be potentially outcasted from the group. And that is actually like a root fear where you don't want to put yourself in a spot where you're being judged, where you have risk that you could be outcasted like that. And why would you put yourself in a situation like that? Well, nowadays, that's where all the good is, the success, the value that you can provide to other human beings. But back in those days, you wanted to fit in to survive. You wanted to be a part of the group. That's a good example to kind of test yourself. Can you get up on a table, make a fool out of yourself? Like, are you comfortable with intentional suffering? Are you comfortable with voluntary discomfort? And that would be one of the bigger reasons why I am pushing forward with this project itself. So I told you we'd be discussing some reasons why I am and why I'm not. So this is kind of a interesting dynamic, the judgment portion of it, and then putting yourself out there. So what's funny too with this topic is, if you can picture, like, what is this judgment, this fear of judgment for? Yeah, we discussed the tribal, like, fitting in, being part of the group. But what's funny is, so we talked about how everybody battles this on one hand, and the other hand, because everybody battles this, what are you afraid of? If everybody's battling this fear of judgment, then what are we? All that leaves is our fear of judgment. We're afraid of being judged by a bunch of people that are afraid of being judged. It's an interesting dynamic there. So really, what is the fear? What is that for? What's the purpose? And that kind of is something that I like to keep in my mind when I feel myself kind of letting off the gas, or kind of getting wrapped up in those fear type thoughts, where really it's okay. We're all humans and we're all just getting by on this rock. So another thing that's kind of interesting too is the value that we put into these words. Have you ever noticed some people take offense to specific wording more than others? And that kind of leads me to believe that it's not really the words themselves. The words themselves have meaning, because, I can say something like apple, and you picture that in your head and you know what an apple looks like. But what's interesting is the way individuals perceive that. Now, what color was the apple that you brought into your mind, and what did it look like? Was it a perfect red, shiny apple? Did it have some scars? Did this apple have a bite out of it? Was this apple yellow or green? Or everybody, when you say a word, yeah, everybody knows what that means, but the perspective of it is interesting, and the value is different for each individual. So that's kind of the same with this whole judgment thing. what do you perceive when you're being judged by somebody, or you feel like you are being judged by somebody? Because odds are that person's feeling the same thing. They're being worried about being judged too. And really the people that are being judged are the ones that are putting themselves out there. And most people are trying to, stay in the background, stay in the tribe so they don't stand out. And it's easier to, pick out somebody that's trying to. It's like there's this example of crabs or lobsters in a pot, and you start boiling the water, and they all start climbing out, and the ones at the top that are reaching over the edge, the bottom ones are not trying to climb out, but they're grabbing onto the ones that are above them and pulling them back down. It's very interesting how, like, when you see somebody climbing out, like, the success is to some offensive, and that kind of jives with the value being provided by whatever it is you're doing, whatever words you're using. Like, some people take more offense to specific words than others. And why is that? It's just because they're putting more value on these specific words. And that's not to say that it's necessarily their fault, because there are upbringings that could contribute to such beliefs. Like, some words might specifically cut deeper, like dig more into past traumas that people have gone through that you might not specifically understand. And it's one thing to know, like, the story behind it. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I get that you can tell me a story, but the feelings and the emotions of being in the situation are different, and that's something that you can't really get unless you were there. And that's the kind of deep cut that some words might cause specific individuals that have gone through certain past traumas. Now, kind of this next point is really a separate topic that could be discussed. Again, there's hundreds of thousands of books out there about this topic. Everybody talks about it, and it's kind of more or less overrated at this point. But we've already discussed this a little bit briefly, scratch the surface. But your ego, it kind of plays into this judgment, because really, where's that pain that you feel from being judged coming from? And that typically is the ego that is being or feeling suppressed or feeling hurt. And it's not, your ego isn't necessarily a bad thing, because that's kind of where your desires stem from too, what you want to do. And your ego is really there to protect you, but it does have a lot of socially damaging traits to it. So it's trying to keep you safe by not harming you, not putting yourself in a spot where you may or may not be outcasted or judged in whatever way. And now you hear people say it's easier said than done, but easy is a funny word. Easier. Really, it's not easier said than done. With your ego trying to work to keep us safe, that is work. When you're putting this value, it's straining on your mind. You're working to put this value into specific things. Or when you feel like you're being judged, that's work. You're thinking about it, and your ego's just trying to be safe, keep you safe by saying, like, oh, you better watch out for this or whatever. It's the same kind of like primal emotions of, oh, there's a tiger in the grass over there, but better be careful. Like, be ready for anything. That survival early brain. But when you think about it in a way where, like, another common phrase is letting it go. Just let it go. I know that's kind of like just one of those things that's talked about so much, where it's like, oh, come on, Brody, like, really, this is so basic, so overused. But just think about that for a minute. Like, really, when you're working your mind putting value on these words, fearing judgment, that is more work. That is harder than letting go of something. And what makes it feel like it's easier said than done is that you're listening to that ego, and your ego doesn't want you to think that, because your ego doesn't want to be let go of. But if you can let that go, just think of like just a release. You're holding a weight in your hand and your muscle is straining and it hurts, but you think it's doing you good. I mean, obviously working out is a different story, but holding the weight of something that isn't helping you is much harder than the act of letting go. It's just different muscles, really. I mean, you're holding a weight with your arm at like a 90 degrees from the ground, and that's straining your bicep trying to hold that up. It feels like it's harder to let it go, but all it is different muscles. Now, instead of your bicep straining, all you got to do is, lightly move your fingers and release it, and lets off all that pressure from your bicep. So it's just a different way of approaching thought. So another example or way about thinking about this idea is, have you ever just changed your opinion or changed your mind on something? Or say you thought one way or had an idea, you felt like you had a good understanding of something, and your friend comes along and changes your mind. Obviously not like that, but say after some convincing, what is this convincing that makes you change your mind? And think of that before and after. So think of, you believe one thing, and then after your mind gets changed, you're still the same you, but why are you thinking differently? That's like different processes in your brain. So in this example, instead of using your bicep versus your finger muscles to strain or use different muscles to relieve yourself, this is kind of, one form of thought, or, using one strand of thinking versus another. Not that one or the other is more or less beneficial, but just thinking differently, thinking a different opinion, using a different, it feels different when something clicks like that. Or like, say you don't understand something fully, and it's like that oh or aha moment where what is different? It's just, things like you can almost feel that neural firing, like where that connection is finally made. So that's just another example where, it's just different areas of the brain, different forms of thought, different muscles in the body, and there's tons of examples. But essentially what you're doing is letting go of weight of thought, and it's just a different way of thinking about that. So this is a topic that we could just go on forever about. I mean, we're just scratching the surface here. We could go on and on about the thought, and about, we kind of scratch the surface of brain and thinking and history. There's so much value we talked about. So, there could be different parts to this, and that may happen in the future. But I did want to get into a reason why, or kind of the bigger reason that finally, pushed me to move forward with this, the biggest final push, really. And that is, well, really the reason for this is just for my future children. I don't have children yet, but just thinking about who I am and what I want to be, And I think about what happens when I die pretty often, and what am I gonna be remembered by. And like nowadays, that's so much easier to solve than generations ago. Like who are the greats that you remember? I mean, you remember the greats, and that's pretty much it. The ones that left something major behind. But nowadays with technology and stuff, I've always been pretty reluctant to use technology. I like staying grounded. I love nature, anything outside, and pretty much avoided technology and social media and stuff like that. But this was my solution to that problem. I want to leave something behind, and not only that for my children, but not just to leave something behind, but I want them to be able to look back and see how their father became who he was. And I'm 25 years old at this recording, and I'm so excited to see this progress, this progression of who I am now and who I'm going to be. And I know I've come a long way in the last few years. I mean, I've come a long way since birth, obviously, but starting this now, I want to just kind of see that contrast of who I'm going to become. I want to leave this trail of growth. So this is kind of an accountability project, and I want to leave something behind and be able to look back on my progress and maybe give my children some entertainment. So that's the deeper meaning, and I really hope you guys love this. Maybe I get some people to enjoy listening to me and agree with me and find entertainment in it. So this is going to be fun. It's going to be a fun project, and I'm super excited to move forward with this. My plan is 1 episode a week, and I am definitely going to have guests on doing some interviews, and this might be a little crazy, guys, so hang on. We're going to jump into some crazy topics, some just like the intro said, it's going to be wild. So keep an open mind, and I hope you guys enjoy the ride. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great one.